This video has been a long time coming, and I'm finally glad that I was able to put it all together. This is a challenge that I've been wanting to do for a long time. My community has been wanting to see me do it for a long time. And with the start of the new year, I finally decided, you know what, let's actually do it. If you're unaware, this challenge is known as Rune Level 1, or historically in previous Dark Souls games, Souls Level 1. What that means is that you have to pick a very generic basic class like the Wretch or the Bandit. Doesn't have a lot of additional points and a lot of additional stats anywhere, and you have to basically beat the entire game without leveling up ever. Thus, Rune Level 1, Souls Level 1. This challenge took me a little bit over 100 hours. Some bosses didn't take me too long. Some bosses took me super long. And I want to just tell you and walk you through my entire journey with this. Now, I wanted to also acknowledge that this was not a 100% playthrough. So my entire goal was to just focus on beating the main, bosses in order to get all the way up to Elden Beast / Radagon. Now, I do also want to make sure that we beat pretty much every boss for the most part that requires, like, say, an achievement, with the exception of Placido Sax and Forta Sax, mainly because I ran out of time. And I also wanted to spend that time going into the DLC Shadow of the Erdtree and using that time that I had to get some additional weapons and talismans to make this playthrough significantly easier. I've beaten Elden Ring, I think, before this playthrough about a dozen times. A lot of times when the games first came out to do all the endings, a few times to check out different weapons, and also doing a playthrough to prepare for Shadow of the Erdtree. So I am very experienced in the game, but doing this version of the playthrough was incredibly difficult and incredibly challenging, and forcing me to relearn bosses, because as you see through these playthroughs, there becomes a time where the moment I get hit one time, I'm cooked, I'm gone. So perfection was almost key in some of these fights, and kind of exploitation of like certain movesets, certain attacks, and using certain weapons that I had never used to make this playthrough significantly easier. Now, I will also say that I had people in chat that had already done this kind of challenge in this entire playthrough, so they were willing and helpful to make, give me tips to make these fights go by even faster. Even all that said, this was still a fantastic, challenge, and some of these bosses were incredibly difficult and were very satisfying to finally beat. Now, I know what you're thinking. Do I fight Malenia? And the answer is, you gotta wait and see. But we absolutely fight her, and it was easily the most rewarding and satisfying fight in this entire playthrough. I want to walk you through the entire fight of each boss that we mainly focus. There are some, lower tier enemies that we fight that was just, that was there, we might as well fight it. But I want to focus on the main playthrough and kind of my walking through my thought process on what I was thinking to use, what I was thinking of, how long it was going to take, and how this playthrough really changed my perspective on Elden Ring and Elden Ring playthroughs. I didn't think that I was going to be able to do this at times, but after over 100 hours, I definitely will say that we did it. Obviously, the first boss is the tutorial boss, and for the most part, I was just going to go in, get cooked. I thought about jumping off the map, but we're going to get a little bit of practice, a little bit of feeling of how all the enemies are going to hurt, and nothing really out of the ordinary. I think for most people, you just go in, do a couple hits, die, and then move on, which is pretty much what I did right here. I try to just work and get just in the flow of using, a controller, because I'm mostly a mouse and keyboard player. So using the controller is always, something I got to get back into the flow of doing. And once we die, we move on into the actual beginning of the game. And obviously chat wanted us to go right off the bat in fighting someone. So let's go fight Tree Sentinel. Tree Sentinel was an enemy that out the gate made me realize that I needed to learn to pace my attacks and to become more reactive than, proactive. Fighting this boss took me about an hour and a half, and having pretty much no gear and no anything off the bat made this a bit of a struggle that I wasn't prepared for. It reminded me a lot of my first playthrough way back in the day when I first fought Tree Sentinel when the game first came out. Back then, I know it took me a couple hours as well. So looking at the comparison, proud of myself for doing this in about an hour or so. Still though, this was a very tough fight, but it was very rewarding because, hey, one enemy down and a bunch to go. But for the most part, this was very important because it gives me the Golden Halberd, which had a really good skill, Golden Vow, which also allowed me to increase my damage, which was very, very needed for these early fights, and also allowing me to just get some practice with, dodging attacks, seeing what windows that I have to attack and when I don't have the freedom to attack. It also taught me a thing where certain enemies are easier to fight and to force certain attacks to happen when you're on one side or the other of a boss. So for example, on this guy, I tried to always stay closer to the shield side, and depending on how low the health was, I would start moving to the other side to trigger certain attacks from having a higher chance of happening. So learning to manipulate certain attacks and not getting hit by the big one-shot attacks, because there was a few attacks that he would do. They were AoE, and no matter what, they were going to be a one-shot even at full health. So having to fight this guy multiple times instantly was like, okay, we got to get into the flow of this guy. We need to learn to actually fight him and become reactionary, and also being very concise and firm with when I'm going to attack. A lot of times in this playthrough, you'll notice that I start second guessing whether or not this attack window is good or not for me. And this was a very good learning tool for like, okay, once he does this attack, I need to attack once, twice, get out. Luckily, I also was able to go fight some soldiers a little bit further away, and then I got a sword that allowed me to do a fair amount of damage, better than the club. Obviously, as we level up, you'll see me go back to the club, but to start off, this sword was really, really good to get a couple of quick attacks in and then run away. Oh. Oof. That's more like it. The first of many enemy failed, or gods failed, or demigods failed, which was very satisfying. Now we move on to the first big boss, Margit. Margit is that first boss that every single person, even if they fought Tree Sentinel or didn't fight Tree Sentinel, will get soft locked on. Margit is incredibly difficult, especially at Souls Rune level 1, and if you're not really prepared for all of his combos that will constantly react to you. So like there's multiple combos where the moment you try to heal, he will attack you to stop it. The moment you try to get behind him, he will have an attack that gets him away from you. And all these attacks are very, very tough to fight, but for the most part, you can build around him. And once you learn his attack pattern, and again, that window of actual attacks that you have freedom, or a lot of people in Souls games call it the attack windows to punish. Once you know how to punish him in those attack windows and what attacks you can kind of stop him from attacking you with, he becomes significantly easier, but still hard. What I mean by that is, even though he's still hard, he's more predictable and will do things that you need him to do or things that you want him to do. This guy still took me a couple hours. I want to say about an hour and a half, which wasn't terrible, but indicative of what the entire playthrough was going to offer for me. After a few hours and a lot of you dieds, Margit is finally down. Satisfying, we gain our first additional talisman pouch, which these talismans will be becoming like a must. So having these early is really, really good. Moving on through Stormvale Castle, we get to the big bad at the top of the castle, Godrick the Grafted. So you know, the guy that has the big dragon claw with the fire, that has all of the silly stuff that he does that is just super brutal because every single attack is either a one-shot or may as well be a one-shot. This is where the game starts off where you're like, okay, I need to start getting really perfect. The other thing is this boss doesn't have a lot of health, but for a Souls level beginner, this guy feels like he has so much health, especially moving into phase 2 when he starts having all the fire that will one-shot you as well. This was the first guy where I truly felt like I was going to be here for a substantial amount of time, and I was. I didn't think I was going to be there for 3.5 hours, but after 3.5 hours of getting close multiple times and either panic rolling too many times or trying to push through thinking that like I had a bunch of health, you know those moments where you think, okay, he's low, let me just spam attack and I will maybe trade some damage and finish him off, and that wasn't the case. And it really forced me to have to truly learn his attack pattern, and also learning how far away from an attack I could be before it didn't hit me in the hitbox window. Things like that you don't think of when you have a very long health bar, when you have a lot of ways to like heal, when you're also doing a lot more damage. All that stuff doesn't really go into play until you do a Souls challenge like this. And I saw a lot of deaths. I got close, I died, I got close, I died. And you would start feeling like you're going through this roller coaster where you'd get some really good progress, would die, then you'd have multiple phases in a row where you just did not do really good. And you're like, man, I feel like I'm progressing backwards instead of forwards. And until you get to the point that you finally just say, screw it, I'm just going to really learn his attacks. 1 hit, 2 hit, get out of there. And sooner or later you get really decent. You get some really good luck as well as you start learning, and you also get some really good damage breaks as well, and you finally break through and you get the dub. You just gotta lock in sometimes, chat. Lock in we did, because we finally pushed through and got him done. Godrick was defeated, and that was very satisfying after multiple hours of being at him and getting close, dying, getting close, got, just so close so many times, and finally taking him down. One thing I also forgot to mention earlier is that, as you notice, we started, really dipping into talismans. So we spent some time in these hours we left to go get the charge talisman, which would allow us to do increased damage with charge attacks, and also the axe talisman, which would allow us to get increased damage on jump attacks. These two things, on top of getting a shield and putting it on our back, allowed us to take a little bit less damage, and also will allow us to do a little bit more damage. And as you'll notice, doing as many of those things as we can became a very common thing for me in this playthrough. We also do a thing like a lot of people do at the beginning of bosses, where they start popping all of their skills. It wasn't something that I had ever really done in all of my playthroughs. I kind of did them just a little bit here and there, but I started really getting into mid-maxing my damage for as often as I could. So using like Barbaric Roar, doing like Golden Vow, all these things, and getting like 10% here, 20% here, a little bit of damage resistance here, a little bit of damage resistance there. Anytime I could like get a little bit of more damage out, I was trying to pop it as often as I could. I also got into the mindset of going through phase 1 without having to use a single flask as often as I could, because phase 2 obviously more things were going to happen and I needed as many flasks as I could. So getting as far into the fight without using a flask became a common thing for me, and if I had to use a lot of flasks early on, it was basically a reset. At that time, the game kind of opens up a little bit now that we've gone through the main path and gone through Stormveil Castle. We take a quick break to go get our Godrick's Great Rune, which is going to be a must this entire playthrough. With using Rune Arcs, is going to give us that +5 to a lot of stats, and it's going to be kind of needed because a lot of the weapons that I'm going to want to use, or skills I'm going to want to use, is going to be needed, because the only way I can get those stats when not leveling up is with Godrick's Great Rune. Obviously, with talismans later on, we're going to be going for America's Sword Seal and Scar Seal, same for Radagon's Sword Seal and Scar Seal. Just ways that are going to allow us to get more stats and more damage output. Now I know what you're thinking, but Daniel, getting those Sword Seals and Scar Seals are also going to increase your damage, and being honest, I'm going to get one shot anyway, so it doesn't matter that I'm using something that's going to increase damage taken, because at a rune level 1, most bosses are going to one-shot me anyway, so I might as well take the increase in stat bonuses, because even if I don't have it on, I'm still getting one shot. There are a few bosses that I don't use it on, but that's going to be a different discussion later on in the video. Now, obviously, in order to get to the next part of the game, our goal is to get another Great Rune. So the next Great Rune we're going for is in Raya Lucaria with Rennala. And we have a few bosses we got to get to and get through in order to get to her. On the way to her, we're picking up a Sword Seal. We're picking up a new weapon, a Banished Knight Halberd from this enemy that I don't think I've ever fought him, but maybe I fought him in the past. But this one's already a level 8, which means that I don't have to level it up, and it's going to do a fair amount of damage off the bat. So pairing this with things like Flame grant me strength, a Sword Seal, so having a lot of damage early, Golden Vow, it's going to be really, really nice. And this halberd carries me through the game for a little bit of time, and it's really, really nice because it does really, really strong damage against mobs as well. So a lot of these enemies that become overwhelming, they, with its sweeping attack, they just get cooked, which is very, very nice. It's not something I've ever really used until this playthrough, and if you're doing this playthrough, make sure you pick this weapon up. It's really, really strong, and it's going to make your life way easier. Now that we're here at Raya Lucaria though, and we've gotten a couple of better pieces of gear, we're well equipped, and all we have to do is just make it through the entire city. And these guys really suck. They suck already, but at level 1 they are annoying. With all of the guys with the magic, all those guys constantly hitting you from a distance, stunning you. I hate this place. I hated it back when I first played it. I still hate Raya Lucaria. I know some people like it, but I could rant on and on about Raya Lucaria. This is just not a fun place to be. Unfortunately, we have to go through here to get to Rennala, and we gotta first fight Radagon's big old dog. So let's go do that. Patience. That is, if you look up this dog, if you look up Radagon's dog in the dictionary, patience and timing is going to be right there. This guy is a light fight, but he is brutal. He does all those magic attacks as well, and you got to be careful. You got to know when to dodge and when not to dodge, and where to actually stand. Some attacks are very easy to dodge just by making sure you're a little bit away from him when he does it. Because of that, it's also very easy to punish those attacks because of his long windows after he attacks. This guy is really, really tough if you are not used to RL1. So for most of us that's probably doing this, we're not. But once you get a couple of combos off, he should go down fairly quickly. Finally, we have reached Rennala, Queen of the Moon. Rennala has this big 2 phase, where the first phase you have to take the specific child. You have to kill the daughter, kill the child, and then it will, after you kill enough of them, it will drop Rennala to the ground and you can do some big damage to her. Then she goes back up, you have to do it again. Once you do all that, you get a big cutscene. You go into phase 2 where she then calls out different summons. Could be a Colossus, could be a dragon, could be a bunch of mobs, and she does all this magic stuff in a beautiful setting. I always really enjoy this fight because of the setting, really cool. But we already have this halberd. The halberd does really good damage to her, but the problem is she loves to move away. She loves to leave you. If you can get really lucky, you can do a couple swings, a heavy charge swing. Remember, we have the talismans that's increasing our attack too. If you do those, you can get a couple stuns on her and she won't move as much. You can also sometimes get her into a stun lock if you time your swings really well. The problem with that is the one time I did it, I did all of her health the moment you ran up to her, and I got greedy and died. And I should have just, backed off, let her move around, then get one more poke and kill her. But if you're lucky, the moment the encounter starts, you can rush her, get a heavy charge, and get a heavy charge, and it should stun her. If it doesn't stun her, you can just keep doing it over and over until it stuns her. And if you do it quick enough, and if you time it right enough, you will never have to worry about her in phase 2. I had it happen. Unfortunately, I got greedy and I mistimed something and she got away. But I will tell you, if you can time your heavy charges with this halberd, you can make phase 2 really easy. As you see, if it works right, you can just absolutely make a joke of phase 2, and then you move on to getting your second grade rune, which means at this point we have a lot of places we can go. And what do we want to fight next? Nobody. It's time to open up a lot of the world and go explore and fight some other enemies in the game. We've done a lot of the main campaign, and now I want to go flex my muscles and I want to go explore. We're going to go explore Ansel River. We're going to go explore K-Lead. We're going to go fight and grab some better weapons elsewhere, grab some new talismans. So let's take a quick detour and let's go do some of that. Who does he think he is, Chad? I am. Please. Alright. Sheesh. At this point, we're feeling good. We've knocked out a lot of enemies, but Unlocking Radahn, for example, and having to fight Misbegotten and Crucible Knight seemed to be a bad idea. I suck at Crucible Knight fights, and they are easily the most difficult for me. Everyone in this game has their, vices. Everyone has their weaknesses. And for me, it's always been Crucible Knights. And in a RL1 playthrough, that is exacerbated, basically. This guy sucks. The one guy I just couldn't get because of his shield, because of all the attacks. There were times that I even pulled out a summon to fight him. And I was like, you know what? I'll be here forever. I got, actual enemies to fight. I'll come back later when I have like a much better weapon. We do come back later and cook him, but I really wanted to take him down now. And after about an hour, I was like, you know what? This ain't even a must fight right now. We'll take a break from him. Excuse you. Ah, yes, Altus Plateau, where everything starts becoming even more difficult and we have to fight more tree sentinels. Our next one is, in order to get into the city, Draconic Sentinel. Obviously, Draconic Sentinel is the dragon version, and while there was a very easy way to knock this guy out, with summons and stuff, I ain't got time for him. And after fighting him legit for a hot minute, we decided to do the strategy that a lot of people have suggested and have done themselves. And in a R1 playthrough, everything goes, in my opinion. Any way to knock him out, we're gonna do it. So we do the strat where we weaken him with poison, and it takes a while, but we get him down. After fighting him and getting close, that dragon, phase is really, really tough. And I didn't want to, I got better things to do. I want to go fight, the big bads up there in the city. And you know what? If I have to, do the poison mist on one enemy, I'm okay with that. At this point, we're finally getting up to the top, and we have a few bosses left in this area, and we get to finally fight Mr. Golden Boy, Godfrey. The Golden Boy is honestly very, very easy, surprisingly enough, even at level 1. All of his attacks are very telegraphed. They're really easy to dodge, but this is where pretty much anything is going to one-shot me. So even though I am not that worried about this fight, the moment I get too greedy, mess up, he hits me once and I'm pretty much gone. So you're starting to get to that point that no matter what you do, you're gonna get one shot. And while that's not a terrible thing for this fight, you still take him down, after 4 or 5 attempts. We still have to worry now about, okay, the moment we get hit once, we're done. Later on, I do learn about ways to minimize that, but as of right now, I'm still under the pretense of the moment I get hit, I'm done. Luckily, with Gold Shade, a lot of his attacks are telegraphed. They're really big windows to punish. You can jump over a lot of attacks. You can just simply roll into him to miss a lot of attacks. And as long as you, don't get too greedy with your attacks, you should be pretty handily taking care of him in no time. He also doesn't have a phase 2. He has 1 health bar. You go through it, he's dead. You're out of here. The shade gives us another talisman patch, which means we need to take a quick detour before we go up to the top of the city and fight the final guy up here. Before we get to, the next boss, we have to go get another talisman, which is kind of really, really important for this entire playthrough. Dancer Charm. Raises attack power with lower equipment load. That's also what let's go. Yeah, so this talisman is going to increase our damage when we have a low equip load. Obviously, we can't put on a lot of stuff right now, so we're going to have a low equip load anyway, so we might as well take advantage of the damage. This is going to be really nice for the next couple of fights, even though later on we're going to take it off because the scaling of this is not very good. If we want to get like the big 15 to 20% damage, we have to basically go down to 6%, and most of the time we're going to be around 10 to 12%. But right now, any damage is better than no damage increasing at all. Now that we've gotten all tooled up, we're ready to go fight Morgott, and this guy was actually pretty easy. Maybe it's because I was, had fought so many enemies like him already, and I was kind of starting to get comfortable with being around a rune level 1 playthrough. But, we had all of our perks. Obviously, he hits me once or twice, I'm dead. But for the most part, this guy, had a very low, I think, poise threshold, which means I did a lot of damage to get stuns off, and also was able to apply bleed to my weapon. Bleed was also really good. I applied a lot of bleed to him, so we got a big chunk of damage occasionally taken off of him when bleed activated. Biggest thing always is to get through phase 1 as quickly and as cleanly as possible, and for the most part we were able to do that very well. I'm not even going to talk too much about this playthrough, this fight specifically. I'm just going to show its entire run. I was very proud of this because this guy could have taken me in a very long time, and he took us like maybe 45 minutes, and a very clean 45 minutes once I got very comfortable. Obviously, I'm doing the whole thing where I pop all of my stuff out the bat. We activate, all of our damage buffs. We activate Crag Blade, and then we go in and we get a very smooth, very clean phase 1 and phase 2. The bleed early. Let's go. That's how you do it, chat. Less than 3 minutes before our bus ran off too. That was about a minute and a few seconds to be exact. And out of a lot of these fights, as you hear me say, a lot of my perks and a lot of my stuff only last for 3 minutes tops. Some of them last about 45 seconds, but majority at this point is if I want to do the maximum amount of damage and get this done, especially with some of the weapons and skills I'm using, I have to do it within a 3-minute threshold before things start dropping off, and then I can't use the weapons, I can't use the skills anymore. Because of that, 3 minutes starts becoming, if I'm going to get this boss done, I have to do it in, that amount of time. However, there is a boss that's going to take me significantly longer later on down the line. In the comments, let me know what boss you think that might be. At this point, we're making our way towards the Forbidden Lands, and there were a few places that at first I thought about going to fight. There's a couple of bosses that are pretty fun to fight, but again, we had to at times stay laser focused on the goal, and that was making our way towards the Forbidden Lands. We can make our way through there and get to the Mountain of Giants. And Mountain of Giants is where we're going to start unlocking a fair amount of stuff that was going to be helpful. Obviously, we have to fight the Fire Giant, which is going to be a huge toll for me, as I generally do not do well against the Fire Giant. But we're going to be able to get some higher tier smithing stones, especially the Dragon Smithing Stone, which was going to be really needed because these weapons we're going to have to upgrade, and we need these smithing stones. And while we haven't had a chance to get the mining bell bearings yet, we need to have ways to make sure we're doing the maximum amount of damage, because in RL1 you're already not doing a lot of damage sometimes. So any way we can get more damage, the better. Once we hit the mountain of the fire giants, we have one goal, and that's to go fight the fire giant. And while we can go mess around with some other stuff, we do a little bit of invading while we're here. My one goal is to set that fire ablaze at the top of the mountain, and we have one boss standing in our way. That being said, this day on stream, I chose not to fight him. I knew this guy was going to take a long time, and I said, you know what? I've fought a lot of stuff today. We started with Draconic Sentinel, we've gone all the way through, and I don't think this is worth my time right now. I know it's going to take a long time. We're going to have our own stream dedicated to Fire Giant, and I'm just going to hope that it takes, just a couple hours. I don't remember the jump for this, so I pressed the wrong button. That's totally my fault. Josh, this was a screen that I needed to get very comfortable with seeing, especially with Fire Giant. There was a lot and a lot and a lot of you died. Some right out the gate, some really close, some that were just, it was a lot of deaths, a whole lot of deaths. I know some people think Fire Giant is a cakewalk, and for some people Fire Giant is incredibly easy, but even with all of my experience with Fire Giant, I always struggle with him. I have to really learn that big enemies in Elden Ring and me never do well, especially when you can't see their movements because they're so big off the screen. And with him doing so many random attacks, especially if you got close, he shot the fire, especially in phase 2. He shot all of the little fire orbs, had the little AoE orbs. Every single thing that he does, especially being a one-shot or basically a one-shot, makes him incredibly difficult for me. And even this, I was very happy that we defeated him, but after hours upon hours upon hours, I'm pretty sure if I look at the VODs back, it took me about 22 hours to beat him. And that is insane, and that's my weakness. I talked earlier about certain bosses, people are just, they struggle with, no matter how consistent and how good and how experienced they are. Fire Giant is my Achilles heel, basically. And this was the boss that I had the most worries about. Malenia wasn't it. Radagon, Elden Beast wasn't it. This was the boss that I knew that if I couldn't get past Fire Giant, I was never going to get this challenge done. But I also knew if I got past Fire Giant, this playthrough was going to actually, I was going to get to the end. I was going to succeed. This was that wall that I knew if I could get through it, I was not clear, but man, oof, the confidence boost. No shot, what? after way too many hours to count, Fire Giant is finally down after, I don't know, using about half a dozen different weapons and settling back surprisingly on the club just to do a lot of damage and just, spam attacks. Also thinking of putting on poison, which ended up helping a lot, was the plan. Activating Cragblade and being basically like my big damage buff from Cragblade and just constantly attacking over and over, triggering that poison helped a whole lot. It wasn't a lot of damage, but in those moments that I couldn't damage him in phase 2 and I had to run around, at least the poison would constantly tick. And as you'll see, I really take advantage of poison in these later fights because some of these guys I'm spending more time dodging and rolling than actually attacking. And just to make this fight last a little bit less time, having the club and having a pretty high, leveled up club at that with poison on it made this finally, it still took a long time. It still took about 24 hours, but that change was the only one that I ended up getting the win with. Surprisingly, once you finish Fire Giant and you activate the fire inside the top of the mountain, you're in the late game. We have less than 10 bosses left to go in this playthrough, and I'm feeling pretty good. I'm feeling really good because Fire Giant was incredibly difficult. It was very draining mentally and physically, and it was exhausting, and the relief of finally putting him down at RL1 is one of the highlights of my Elden Ring career. After we've taken out Fire Giant, we take a quick detour to unlock Moghwyn Palace because later on we will have to fight Mohg, the Lord Blood Omen guy, because we gotta fight him. Can't do an RL1 playthrough without him. And then we take a bit of a breather and we just farm some runes at the infamous little plateau where we just have the bird fall off the map a billion times. And I know what you're asking. We can't level up. Why are we doing this? We're doing this for upgrading all of our weapons. One thing I started learning is that we have to have a lot of runes to upgrade them. So we don't want runes to be our issue, and we're going to start upgrading a lot of different weapons just to make sure that we have everything at the optimal version. Also, at this point, we've unlocked a lot of the mind bearing bells, so we can buy a lot of the smithing stones and somber smithing stones to upgrade weapons. All this requires runes, so we spend some time farming runes and also making our way through unlocking Mohg. This is very important because we're going to have to fight both Mohgs. We're going to fight the one down in the depths to get some practice, and then we're going to fight the big one up here. Now, here's a big list of enemies we still have left to fight. We got to go fight Godskin Duo. We got to go fight Beast Clergyman / Maliketh the Black Blade. We got to fight Horah Loux. We got to fight Godfrey. We got to fight Malenia. We got Radahn. We have Radagon and Elden beasts. So we're gonna just knock out each one by one. We have a few streams left of this, so nothing but bosses left towards the end of the game. Funnily enough, fighting Radahn after Fire Giant, I didn't need to summon all of the enemies, but we did. Fire Giant was, had me so annoyed and so tired that I just pulled out all the stops to fight Radahn. And it's funny that they actually gave me more problems than help. They all died. They made his attacks way more annoying, but we pulled out the halberd and we, got a bunch of stuns on him. Radahn at RL1 surprisingly isn't that bad. A lot of his attacks are telegraphed, as they're big, they're flamboyant, but there's very big windows to punish and very easy places to stay in to finish him off. We had to fight him so we can unlock the new deaths in the world, so we can go get some whetstones and go get some other gear to help increase our damage output of our weapons. So that's why we fought Radahn. Also, we got to go fight Rykard as well, so let's go do that. This might not be a big thing that a lot of people don't know, but obviously you can pop all your stuff inside the room before you start the fight. Also, I would highly recommend getting the lance. The lance is really strong, especially when you put it with the Great Serpent Hunter. For some reason, if you crouch, you can spam Great Serpent Hunter's attack and do basically 2 or 3 attacks and push him to phase 2 instantly. I don't know why that is the case, but if you crouch, do the heavy attack, crouch, do the heavy attack, crouch, do the heavy attack, you pretty much have pushed him to phase 2. In theory, you could do this in phase 2 as well, but what I found to be significantly easier is to put on the parry buckler and then just single attack while holding block. It will allow you to tank a little bit of damage, and for some reason when you're holding the block, you can hit the Serpent Hunter attack significantly faster. It does a little bit less damage, but you can put a lot of damage in a short amount of time. It doesn't take a lot of stamina, and you can do it while guarding, so it also gives you that window of dodging. I would highly recommend doing this, just holding the buckler, parry, shield, and just spam light attacks over and over, and then just constantly back up and back up and back up. This could be a really difficult fight, especially with phase 2 and all the fire, but doing it this way allows you to push through phase 2 and phase 1 practically easily. It's probably gonna be RNG. Like if he doesn't do that attack afterwards, then I'm good. Surprisingly, pretty straightforward, pretty smooth. If you're struggling with Rykard, this is a strategy I would highly recommend. There is a little bit of RNG of what his attack is, but as long as you keep consistent, you'll get some good RNG and be out of there in a minute or two. At that point, we're getting close to the end, and there is a big, Godskin Duo we gotta fight. But in order to fight them, I thought about trying to do it all these other ways, and I said, you know what? I'm going to get sleeping pots. And at this point, we take a quick detour into the Erdtree DLC so we can farm up these materials so we can craft our own sleep pots. Unlike the normal game, there is a limited amount of resources to crafting sleep pots, but in the DLC, there's an infinite amount as long as you can just run around and picking them up over and over. In the Cerulean Coast, there is a section where, as you see on the screen, there's all these little plants you can pick up. You can pick up, I think, about 12 of them per cycle, so you just go back to the fast travel point and start again, and you just run through. As you do it, they always spawn in these same locations, but you just run through, you pick them all up, and it's pretty straightforward. I'll leave on the screen one route of the run. You can see what they actually look like, and once you are done with the route, you can either start over, go back and do the route again, or you can craft a few and go try to fight Godskin Duo, which is what we did. We normally did 2 or 3 runs to get around 25 of this material so we could buy the rest of them and craft the materials needed to make the sleep pots. Go fight the Godskin Duo. If it didn't work, we just run back and do it all over again. Keep doing that until they go down. I personally think Godskin Duo is annoying, so putting them to sleep is the way to go. We've also turned this Godskin Duo fight into a 2-on-2 by summoning. I know what you think about summoning, but again, this is RL1. We don't use the summon to do attacks, we just do the summon to draw the aggro of one of them, and then whichever one comes to us we put to sleep. And at this point we're using the Starfist, which is really good. We put them to sleep and then we go to town with Starfist. With the intrinsic bleed and the sleep, this is going to be really strong to do a lot of damage, and just spamming light attacks and the occasional heavy will allow us to kill one, and then we can move to the other one that the summoner is helping with, and then we help with that one, put it to sleep, and it shouldn't take more than 2 or 3 of these Godskin enemies to go down. Now the summon does die sooner or later, so that's why, you know, we're not going to really worry about them, but to start off, the faster we can do this, the better, and it allows us to do some free damage on one of the enemies without getting backstabbed. But if you don't want to summon, just make sure you have a lot of sleep pots to make this go by a lot faster. At this point, I chose to take another break. You know, we're getting close. We have a handful of enemies left, so we decided to just do a little bit of more exploring, knock out a lot of bosses, knock out a lot of optional enemies, you know, go explore down by the Lake of Rot. This is just a really fun session of just, you know, exploring the game. You know, we're getting close to the end. Kind of don't want it to end yet, and I know the last handful of fights are about to be long and brutal, so we're gonna spend some time exploring, getting some more weapons, finding some more smithing stones and mining bells and all that kind of stuff. So we're just gonna fly through some bosses that we kill before we start wrapping this bad boy up with the last big bosses to take out. After taking out a bunch of just random enemies around the map, we decided to go back and work on the actual playthrough, and that is next we have to fight Mohg and Mohg, Lord of Blood. Fighting the one in subterranean first is going to give us practice and learning all of the ways to fight him. We also have to fight him in order to unlock Shadow of the Erdtree DLC, so we might as well start with him down below. He's not too bad, but obviously at this point one-shotting is going to be just the norm, so allowing us to get practice, also using the shackle and using the bubble tier to tank a little bit of damage is also very beneficial. But after we knock out both of them, we hop into the DLC real quick and grab some stuff. Being really comfortable, we go right into Lord of Blood and we do pretty much the same thing. Now we have to deal with his whole knee heal thing where he takes his health, but it's not too bad. We move on through that. Took us still a while. It took us I think like 3 or 4 hours to get a very clean run, but once we do that we are free of Mohg. Both of them are down and we're moving on to a quick detour into the DLC. Originally we were going to do the DLC as well. A few reasons why we didn't do it is we ran out of time, and man, this DLC is hard. These bosses, I know they have the whole scatter tree fragment thing going, but the DLC feels significantly harder to do as a R1 playthrough. And I do think, you know, maybe sometime down the line we'll come back and do a DLC specific R1 playthrough. But even fighting, for example, Golden Hippopotamus, that dude was insane. And there were some other enemies we tried to fight, but we just came in here for a few pieces of gear. We wanted to get some talismans and make our life a little bit easier. But if I ever decide to come back and do another R1 playthrough of the DLC, we're in for quite a ride. Going back to the main game, we take a small quick detour to fight this person right here because we're going to fight Beast Clergyman, Maliketh, Horah Loux. We want to take advantage of Scarlet Rot, and this weapon has intrinsic Scarlet Rot. So this is going to be really, really good for this last little push of the game. And fighting Beast Clergyman first, we're going to take advantage of Scarlet Rot and also putting poison on this thing. So we're going to have Scarlet Rot and poison with this weapon. I gotta be honest, Beast Clergyman and Maliketh were, next to Fire Giant, the two that I thought I was gonna have the most trouble with. And I'm not wrong, I didn't struggle too bad, but it still took me to beat both of them together 6 hours. And that's saying something. Now obviously Fire Giant took us 22, so going from 22 hours to 6 is a huge drop. But it took a lot of just practice, and obviously, like I keep saying, we're at the point where even with the bubble tier allows us to take one hit, and the moment that thing is gone, we're getting one shot. So Beast Clergyman was all about just pushing him as quickly as I could. There was a couple of attacks that I was going to punish every single time, and obviously if you stay at a certain distance, you could have him do the same attacks over and over, which were very easy to punish, especially when he ended with like going in the air slow and slamming the ground. Because we're also running the poison and Scarlet Rot and rapier, we also manipulated his health by just using that to like be a little bit more safe and just constantly hitting him over and over with applying Scarlet Rot and then applying poison, which both of them last a very long time. If I'm not mistaken, poison lasts about 30 seconds. Scarlet Rot lasts about 90 seconds, which is huge, especially in fighting Maliketh. Like I said earlier, a lot of these bosses, now that I've done them, are just big, flamboyant. They don't have a lot of threat. Once you know where to stand, once you know where to move. And Maliketh is the exact same way. And even at rune level 1, he's actually a really fun fight. And once you can like know, okay, I can move here, I can move there, I can attack here, I can punch there, you're pretty clear. And now, yes, I do have the poison and the Scarlet Rot allowing me to still do some damage to him while I'm dodging and moving. But that is to say, you still have to do the mechanics, you still have to do the dodging and not die. And even though, you know, you can let the Scarlet Rot take them out, you still have to kill them and have to live long enough for those like things to happen. And it was very satisfying to take out Maliketh, even though it still took multiple hours. But once he goes down, you know, you're out of here, you're back to the big city. You're moving on to the final stretch of the last 3 enemies, which is Horah Loux, Godfrey, and Radagon. That is a fantastic fight. I feel like I'm becoming a broken record because once again, another fight that is, in my opinion, really, really good once you know how to dodge. Obviously, we're fighting Horah Loux and Godfrey being phase 1, which is just a golden shade again, except he's no longer a golden shade, he's here. So if you can do the first fight, which we already did, then it's the exact same thing here, which is very, very smooth. Once you get to phase 2, this is when you have the Zangief Street Fighter WWE version of Godfrey show up, which is Horah Loux, the first Elden Lord. Obviously, we're still taking advantage of the poison and the Scarlet Rot, which still, even if you're using those effects, you still have to live long enough and dodge everything, especially his like arena wide attacks. He is very, 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 very annoying to fight. because a lot of times he will do things and then follow up his mechanic with a different version of the attack. So he'll do an attack, he'll do like a right, left, right, and if you're hanging it on the right side, he'll follow it up with one more attack. But once you push him to phase 2, I personally have a theme of just letting the Scarlet Rod take him. A lot of these attacks are very flamboyant, very visual, but they're also very easy to dodge, especially when you reapply Scarlet Rod. You could, in theory, let the Scarlet Rod and the passive poison take him out. It will take a while, but you can do some extra damage, but it's just about living. And at this point, that's what I decided to do. Apply Scarlet Rod, apply poison, and then just dodge and dodge and dodge. I will let the Scarlet Rod take him. Let the Scarlet Rod take him, baby. Let the Scarlet Rod take him, baby.
They've tarnished thy strength befits a crown.
Surprisingly enough, we're here. We're at the end. Radagon, Elden Beast, last guy up. Where is it? Oh, that's right. We have one more person to fight. Let's talk real quickly about a few things that we're using. We're using a giant sword with, we're using a great sword with Giant Hunt, which will allow us to do a pretty decent amount of damage and poison damage to stun her. We're using Frost. We're using Sleep Pots because Sleep Pots will knock her out the sky. We are going to also use the Throwing Knives, which will trigger her attacks earlier, because a lot of times you spend a lot of time just following her around and her walking. For the most part, we're going to pull out all the tricks, and we're going to like constantly send her in the air. With enough Giant Hunts, we'll constantly stun her and get a riposte, which is really, really huge. That being said, she still took us about 13 hours to take down because you need so many things to go right at the same time. And she's still incredibly satisfying. And Waterfowl Dance, for the most part, is pretty dodgeable. But there's one time that I had to I was in a very bad position and Sleep Pot saved me. That being said, after about 13 hours of fighting her, we still took her down. Incredibly proud. And once we take her down, we have one boss left to go. Level 1, chat. Ugh. Level 1 Malenia is easily the hardest challenge in this game. Hugely satisfying, man. Took us a very long time. Had to work out a probably half dozen, if not dozen, strategies for this to all come together. And, you know, Malenia is easily in the base game. I know Shadow of the Erdtree has a lot of really difficult stuff, but in the base game, it's easily the hardest challenge to do for RL1. So that means you got one boss left to go, Radagon / Elden Beast. Let's go ahead and take them out too. All right, this is it. Radagon, Elden Beast. Funnily enough, only took us about 3 or 4 hours to really lock in. I hadn't fought these people since the Shadow of the Erdtree patch that allowed you to use Torrent, which makes the final boss so much easier. I remember back in the day when I first played this game, the Elden Beast fight took me like 12 hours because of having to chase the boss around for such a long time. And adding Torrent makes a world of difference for this fight. First fight is pretty straightforward. We're gonna just pop all of our stuff. We're gonna put on Starfist, and we're just gonna do Frost and Bleed and just cook the first boss. And then we're gonna do the same thing with the second boss and get a couple staggers. And we're just gonna cruise through this fight. Again, you know, it only took us a couple hours. Funnily enough, right at the end of the game, stream crashed, but I'm really proud about this playthrough. They have auto too, but 1080, 720p, 60, 720p, 480, 360, 160. Just need to exit out and back up. Try resetting. on stars, man. That is RL complete, chat. And look at that. That's a GG, chat. That is a Rune level 1. Full clear. Really proud of myself, to be honest. I did not expect to get it done. And in a little bit over 100 hours, we were able to do, for the most part, the majority of the entire playthrough. I would like to go back and do the dragons sooner or later, the Placidusax and Fortisax. Fortunately, by the time I thought about that, I had already done some things to lock me out of those. Unless there's a way of doing it after getting to the end of the game, I mean, not a big deal. We can always, do this again, including those guys. What I do want to make sure we do in the future are the DLC. I know a lot of people want to see us fight Consort Radahn. I know a lot of people want to see us fight Mesmer. And you know what? Maybe after Night Rain comes out, maybe leading up to Night Rain, we might do something like that in the future. Either way, the best thing I can say is if you're looking for a challenge and you like Souls games, then do yourself a favor and do this playthrough. This playthrough was some of the most fun and probably challenge I've done in a very long time. Now, you know me with my Destiny stuff, you know me with my Borderlands content, and historically I've always done challenges. This is up there. This is definitely up there. Now, there are ways to make this easier. There are ways to make this harder, but for me personally, for my first Souls experience as far as a challenge, I thought it was very, very, very satisfying, and one that I can't wait to do again in the future. Maybe we'll do some of the other games as well. That is it. The entire game, at least of the base game, Elden Ring, has been completed by your boy at RL1 or Rune level 1. I'm very proud of it. It took a long time to edit this video. Also, my PC crashed, so I was working on it and then had to basically get all the footage again and start over. But that being said, I'm really proud of this. I know my community have been asking for me to do it for a long time, and I wanted to really archive and highlight my experience in it, and I definitely think I'll be doing it again. I don't know if I'll do it with Night Rain. I don't even know if it's possible, but some of the previous Dark Souls games, or even Demon Souls or Bloodborne or any of those, I would really like to get a bit more into it, and I do think this is definitely, is not, looking back on it, not a very, very difficult challenge, but it's definitely a trying challenge that if you want to just push yourself in Souls games and try something out, this is definitely worth doing. If you've made it to the end of the video, just know I truly appreciate you. This has been a long video to make, and it's one of the longer ones that I wanted to cut together. So hopefully you enjoyed it. if you are someone that has been interested in doing a RL1 playthrough, then hopefully all the tips that I put in this video will help you in the future. If you're someone who does all these challenges all the time, let me know what you thought about my experience with it, and any tips you can leave for future runs, leave them in the comment section. As always, I appreciate your support tremendously. Thanks so much for watching this video, and I will hopefully see you in the next one.